So it's important for you, I think, to take the opportunity to really kind of be clear where you're at in relationship to meditation and the teachings for self-realization. To really see if you are clear about where you are at, where you are at in regard to these teachings. Whether or not, I mentioned, I read this brief statement earlier. Once our true nature of pure awareness has become apparent. When I read that, I wonder for how many of you that's the case. How apparent is it to you what your true nature is? How apparent is it to you that pure awareness is your true nature? And when I say how apparent that is, I don't mean how apparent it is as an understanding that you have. I mean, how apparent is it as an experience that you have? And I think part of the experience of awareness, if it is genuine and if there's any consistency to it, right? In other words, if it's not just a flash and then it stops, right? But if there's some consistency to it where it's no longer just a flash and then it stops, but there is an ongoing awareness of who you really are. It doesn't have to be strong. It can't be strong in a sense, at least in the beginning, because you're so still identified. But even though you're identified, if you have a realization of what you are, it's apparent that there's no need to stay there or remain there. It's apparent that there's no need to stay there or remain there. I mean, part of why that's apparent is because the there that I'm referring to is nowhere. It's apparent that there's no need to stay there or remain there because the there that I'm referring to is nowhere. In the sense that there is no location, there is no address, There's no address for the self. There's no location for the self. Remember, there is no form. It has no form. It has no shape. It doesn't appear. So part of the realization is that it's not possible to just be awareness, and it's not necessary to stay there. And when I say it's not possible to just be awareness, I mean it's not possible to just be awareness in the world, right? Obviously it's possible to just be awareness because that's the truth. But it's not possible to be nothing in a world where there is everything. You have to have a body and you have to have an identity and a personality and all of that stuff to be part of this mess. But you see, as it said in the statement that I read, we realize that no effort is required to return to it or to remain there because it's a constant. It's always been this way. You've always been that. You can't remain there. See, there's a paradox. You can't remain there and you can't leave either. Right? You can't remain there, but you can't leave either. Meaning that you can't leave because that's what you are. That's what you were, that's what you are, that's what you will be. So you can't leave there, but you can't remain because to be awareness itself has no form, and so you can't be in the world. And not only is that the case, but it's also the case that part of the realization is that it's not necessary to remain there. You can't remain there, and it's not necessary to remain there. At the same time, you can't leave there. So you go on, once you have, in Zen, they have a lot of, they pay a lot of attention to the idea that it's important for the experience to happen. It's important for the experience to happen. That it's not enough to just conceptually understand these things. And so part of the practice of meditation, especially in the Zen tradition, is to be kind of being as available as possible to have the experience of the truth. And then people talk about the fact that can happen, and it does happen for people, and you've heard the stories, people talking about having enlightenment experiences. And the reality of it is, you're always having an enlightenment experience. Because if you define enlightenment to mean the experience of the truth, the experience of who you actually are, if you define enlightenment to mean that, and I do define enlightenment to mean that. I don't know why people, a lot of people these days are afraid to use the word enlightenment, Oh, well, I do know, that they think it will be misunderstood, but I don't think it'll be misunderstood if you define it, right? Enlightenment is simply the experience of the truth, the experience of who you are. And that experience is always happening. And that one of the things that's important, I think, to understand if you're going to really be available to have the experience is to be clear that the experience is always happening. You're already enlightened. You are already who you are. And there's nothing that needs to happen for that to be the case. No effort is required for that to be the case. That's the problem. That's the problem, because it's a conundrum for most people, because if it is the case that you already are who you are, but that's not the way you're conceiving of it, right? That's not the way you're experiencing it. It's already the case that you are who you are, but that's not the experience that you're having of it. Then for most people, the way it occurs is therefore something has to change. You see the conundrum? If it's already the case that you are who you are and no effort is necessary and nothing has to change for that experience to be available to you, that doesn't register in the mind. The mind can't process that. The mind can't process that I already am the awareness itself, and I am not. Isn't that how it is? I am already the awareness itself, and I am not. Well, the mind can't process that. It's either one way or the other. And so since it's either one way or the other, the way the mind processes that is to say, oh, you're not that. And then the only possibility that you can imagine is to become that. Right? And therefore something has to change. And since that can't happen, the understanding that it can happen can be useful so that you stop trying, so that you stop trying to make it happen. And you simply, that's why the word surrender is used in these practices and teachings, right? Surrender. You just give up. Give up the search, give up the effort, give up trying to be what you already are. And one of the ways that you can do that actively is to stop entertaining what the mind presents you about it. Stop entertaining what the mind presents you about it, because as long as that's the the process that you're in, a mental state, as long as that's the process you're in, where you're going to think your way into, you're going to think yourself into enlightenment, right? As long as that's the process, it's not a possibility. It can't be done. Because the mind, by its very nature, is analyzing and interpreting, processing data. It's processing data. It's not experiencing. The mind can't experience anything. It's processing data. And if you identify yourself with the mind, then you're the mind, and you're processing data, right? And as the mind processing data, you hear about the possibility of enlightenment or the possibility of self-realization, and you try and process that, just like you process all the rest of the data, right? With the idea, if you process the data, you will process the data and produce some kind of result, produce some kind of change, get to that experience. However, as you probably have noticed, I hope, that doesn't work. You can process your ass off for the rest of your life, and you will be no closer to the experience of what you are than you ever were. The mind will comment on the mind as a way of keeping you mental, keeping you in the process of thinking, you see. But awareness doesn't think. Awareness is just being aware. So there is a difference there, There's a difference between being aware of the mind and being aware of what's going on in the mind, and the mind commenting on itself, right? So the awareness is more direct. The awareness is just aware. But, what you said is true, that it's not the kind of thing where for me to say to you, oh, no, that's not awareness, that's the mind, is of that much use. What is of use is for you to see the difference. That awareness is aware of the voice that is speaking as if it's the self commenting on the mind. Yeah. There's all kinds of idiosyncrasies. There's all kinds of convoluted ways that the mind works, and that's one of the reasons why this is not such a simple matter. We're so, see, one of the problems is that we're so conditioned to think that without thinking we're lost. It's like you draw a blank. Like, if I'm not thinking, then what? When in reality, and the thing that's interesting about it, when in reality, thinking has only played a very small role in what you have come to know and how you function in the world. But you don't know that it has played a very small role, because you have attributed, you have assumed that it has been the major factor. You've assumed that it's out of my thinking about life that I function. It's out of my thinking about life that I know what I know. It's out of my thinking about life that I take the actions that I take in my life. But when you start to wake up and see the reality of it, that's not the case at all. It's the awareness. It's the awareness that is the source. It's the awareness that's the real source of your actions. And it's even the awareness that is the source of the thinking. It's even the awareness that is the source of the person. That's one of the reasons that this can become so convoluted, because all there is consciousness. We get into all these digressions about it, right? We get into all these mental places and all these conceptual places about it. But in reality, when it's all said and done, all there is consciousness. It comes right back to the one thing, the non-dual reality. However, there's a lot of noise in the way, isn't there? However, there's a lot of distraction. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of thinking in the way. There's a lot of concepts in the way. And so that's why it's important to operate from the idea that this is all. It can't be emphasized enough that this is already the case, that you're already there, that this is over, this is done. You're not going to do anything. It's not going to go anywhere. In fact, one of the things that I find to be very useful to stay conscious of is that none of this is going anywhere. That's a big one to get. If you really get that in your bones, that could make a significant difference in your life. That this is not going anywhere. Right? Did you ever stop and notice that everybody's going somewhere? You know, that everybody has life figured that it's going somewhere. That's time, right? Everybody's got life figured that it's going somewhere. When you awaken and you see things as they are, one of the things that you see that I think is profound is this is not going anywhere. The present moment is the present moment. It's not going anywhere. It's always just the present moment. If you can get out of that, if you can see, awareness is aware of the truth. Awareness is aware of the truth. Awareness is aware that time's not real. Awareness is aware that this is not going anywhere. And when you can really kind of let go of that this is going anywhere, and really focus on present moment awareness, which is the practice, right? Well, one of the reasons you relax is because you're not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. That's one of the reasons you relax. You can relax into the present moment. You don't have to be concerned about the future anymore because this is not going anywhere. I don't know if that's clear, But I found in my own experience that that's a very profound shift, that this is not going anywhere. It really takes you out of time. It takes you out of time and it allows you to really enjoy the moment, enjoy what's happening now. Why? Because this is it. This is all there really is. And that's the deal. That's what this is all really about in a sense. It's about experiencing things as they are, which means experiencing that all there is the present moment. That's experiencing things as they are. Well, in order to experience things as they are, you have to go through a process of deconstructing and unconditioning yourself enough to be available, right? Because in the conditioned state that most of us are in, right, it's time-bound. It's time-bound. The conditioning itself has you be time-bound. It has a past and a future. But even that, then you might say, well, okay, so what happens to the past and the future if this is not going anywhere and you're just experiencing the present moment? Well, you get to see that the past and the future are in the present moment. That's the only place they ever are. And in the present moment, the past and the future are concepts that are being utilized in order to function in the world. But they're understood to be concepts, that's all. They're just concepts. There's no real past and no real future. But you see in the conditioned state that most of us are in, there is a real past and there is a real future, and that sets up a whole thing, right? That creates the play. That creates the drama. Something's happened and something is going to happen, right? And so that creates the drama. Right? So part of the freedom of being awake is to experience the present moment in such a way where the past and the future are seen to be concepts, and therefore you don't spend time there, because you can't spend time there. If you think you're spending time there, you're not. And so you don't try and spend time in either one of those places, and you just are available to what's going on in the moment. And all that is not something that you're doing. That's just the way it is. That's just natural. It's the natural state. It's the natural state. Meaning preconditioned, without conditioning. It's natural. Another way of saying this is if you want to see a kind of a metaphor for the idea of the natural state, if you look at a tree and you contemplate the tree, and you intentionally, and you can, I've done this so I know you can do it, and you intentionally look at the tree and deconceptualize the tree. Do you understand what I mean? Deconceptualize the tree. In other words, can you see what you're looking at as not a tree, and that what you're looking at, you don't know what that is? That's deconceptualizing a tree. That's deconditioning the tree. Because there was a time when you were a kid when you didn't know what that was. And you learned what it was. So can you look at a tree now and decondition the perception of the tree so you don't know what it is? When you're looking at it and you don't know what it is, that's the natural state, unconditioned. That's the natural state. You may discover that the happiness you thought would be available is not the actual happiness that is available, right? Because the way the mind conceives of happiness, it's some blissful state where there's never any downside to it and there's never any discomfort and so forth and so on. And that's not the happiness that is the real happiness. The real happiness is the happiness, the real happiness is the happiness that is the happiness of the experience of existence itself, and then whatever happens, it doesn't matter. So you could be miserable and be happy. And as you're learning these things and understanding these things, you can understand these things and learn these things, but still be in the state of identity, that I am learning about awareness. I am aware. You see what I'm saying? And it's insidious because it will maintain itself as long as it can and stay in charge. That's what was happening with you. The mind will tell you that you are the self. You see what I'm saying? It'll tell you that you are the self, right? To make sure you don't leave the identity. It's a very insidious thing, isn't it? Very insidious thing. That's why I like Paul Hederman, because that's what he focuses on. He focuses on the fact that this program will use every device it has to keep you in a state of mind. And that includes having you think that you are awareness. Having you think that you are awareness. But you see, it's very important to understand that if you think you are awareness and it doesn't make any difference, right, in terms of the quality of your life, or it doesn't make any difference in terms of who you're being in the world, right, and how you express yourself in the world, then you just think you're awareness, and that's not it at all. So you have to really, that's why attention is so relevant. You have to really pay attention, to what's going on. So, in fact, we become sensitive to the subtle effort that the mind almost continuously makes in order to maintain the illusion of a separate and independent existing self. That's the mind's job. The mind's job is to make sure that who you think you are stays as you are, stays as who you think you are. That's its job. And it'll do whatever it can to maintain that experience. And one of the ways that Paul Hederman talks about this is it will claim everything that happens. Right? It'll claim everything that happens. So the way it claims awareness is it says, okay, you are aware. It'll claim awareness and say you are aware. It's not that you're experiencing yourself as awareness, but you are aware. That's the mind claiming awareness. It claims everything. It's claiming everything right now. Right? It's claiming everything right now. It's claiming you are your body. It's claiming, right? Claiming that right now, all the time in the background, it's claiming it. You're listening to me talk, right? You're listening? You see how it's claiming listening? It's in the background all the time. It's claiming what's going on, right? To keep you in an identity. That's why to be silent and sit still is necessary, right? So that you can have enough less enough of noise and distractions to notice the difference.